Welcome to the channel. Are we very close to reaching 1,000 subscribers? I count on your subscription and your like. I signed for Manchester United instead of Real Madrid and my transfer was a disaster. Donny van de Beek's personal nightmare continued after leaving Man United on loan in the January transfer window, and the player has endured a difficult 3.5 years since leaving Ajax. Everything was agreed with Real Madrid, but it didn't work out, Donny van de Beek told a Dutch newspaper shortly after signing for Manchester United from Ajax. At the time I was angry and wondered if that kind of opportunity would arise again. I think it was because the club couldn't sell the players they had planned. Van de Beek was transferred to the Santiago Bernabeu, and his move to Old Trafford was a move of convenience for all parties. United wanted to sign Jack Grealish that summer, but he was too expensive, and James Maddison, second on the list, was valued at £80 million. After enjoying an excellent season with Ajax, Van de Beek was next on the list of star players, and with Real Madrid stagnating, the midfielder was offered to United for £35 million, rising to £40 million. "Please take good care of our Donny and help him dream," wrote former Ajax CEO Edwin van der Sar in an open letter to United fans in the Manchester Evening News. Almost 4 years later, Van de Beek's time in Manchester was a nightmare, not a dream. He arrived with the world at his feet, but failed to start under 4 different coaches, and now has the challenge of reviving his career on loan at Eintracht Frankfurt. Last month, Van de Beek was loaned to Eintracht until the end of the season, and an option to buy was included, although it already looks unlikely that this will be triggered. Unfortunately, Van de Beek's nightmare continued in Germany. He was hooked at halftime in his 3rd match, was an unused substitute in his 4th, and, although he came off the bench last weekend, was unusually substituted despite having been a substitute himself. If that wasn't enough, Van de Beek was also omitted from Eintracht's squad for the Europa Conference League campaign. UEFA regulations state that clubs can only make 3 changes to their 25-man squad for European competitions, and he was left out. Eintracht's other January signings, Sasa Kalajdzic, Hugo Ekitike, and Philip Max, were chosen to fill those roles. He's only played 4 games in the last 2 years, so it won't happen overnight, Eintracht coach Dino Topmaler said of his snub. But I have 100% confidence in his quality. He will definitely help us in the second half of the season. I told Donny I was sorry, but also what I expected of him now. Van de Beek is fighting for his career, and his fall from grace has been spectacular. Real Madrid wanted to sign him for a reason. He was one of the most exciting young talents in Europe. Van de Beek is a product of the Ajax Academy and has risen through the youth ranks to carve out a prominent role in the first team, enjoying a particularly memorable campaign in 2018-19. With Erik ten Hag in charge, Ajax reached the semi-finals of that season's Champions League and defeated Real Madrid and Juventus in the round of 16. A late collapse against Tottenham at the Amsterdam Arena denied Ajax the opportunity to reach the final, but they won the hearts and minds of neutrals with the way they played. Van de Beek played a key role as an attacking midfielder for Ajax and scored against Juventus in the quarter-final second leg. He also contributed 17 goals and 13 assists in all competitions. There was genuine excitement when he signed for United because the fee paid seemed to represent good value. The only problem was that many questioned where Van de Beek would play. Bruno Fernandes is a starter in Van de Beek's preferred role and has been an immovable object since he was signed from Sporting Lisbon, making the signing questionable from day one. After signing, Van de Beek was forced to wait until the end of November 2020 for his first league start, against Southampton, but it wasn't long before he regressed. In the game after Southampton, Van de Beek started at number 10 against West Ham and Fernandes was dropped, but was hooked at halftime with United 1-0 down, and in hindsight this set the tone for his time in a shirt red. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer didn't rate Van de Beek, and it wasn't hard to see why. He was often anonymous and his skill set did not complement the demands of the Premier League. Van de Beek finished his first season in Manchester with just 15 appearances as a starter in all competitions and continued to be a peripheral figure in the team in the final months of Solskjaer's reign. The player worked hard in the summer ahead of the 2021-22 season to force his way into Solskjaer's plans, But in the final days of the transfer window, he had been an unused substitute in all 3 Premier League games and wanted to step aside. Loan. Executives told Van de Beek he could find a new club to play first-team football. Everton agreed a season-long loan, but Solskjaer pulled the plug on the final day. Solskjaer sent a message to Van de Beek's representatives at that time, saying he was torn between letting him go and continuing with our belief that everything will work out. The day after the window closed, Solskjaer told them he was committed to showing that staying at United was the right decision, both for the club and for Donny. It was a false promise. Van de Beek didn't play, and Solskjaer was sacked in November 2021. Michael Carrick said he had some ideas for Donny, but Ralf Rangnick was signed on an interim basis, and the German looked at Van de Beek in a similar way to his predecessor. While it is understood that teammates were impressed with Van de Beek's performance in training, it did not translate onto the pitch, and his involvement was again limited under Rangnick. He eventually joined Everton on a 6-month loan in January. Ultimately, it's about competition, said Rangnick after Van de Beek moved to Goodison Park. Just like Paul Pogba, I see him in midfield as one of the 6 or 8 positions, and we have some other good players in those positions, and so he hasn't had much game time. That doesn't mean he's not good enough for the Premier League or Manchester United. I'm sure he will get his game time at Everton and show what kind of quality he can be. He's a fantastic person, and over the last 9 or 10 weeks when I've met him, I'm fully aware that he's a fantastic team player, and I wish him all the best for the next few months at Everton. A thigh injury hampered Van de Beek's progress on Merseyside, and he made just 7 appearances for the Toffees. When he returned to United, Ten Hag had been appointed from Ajax, and many felt that a reunion with his former manager could breathe life into his stagnant career. Of course, said Ten Hag when asked if he was looking forward to working with Van de Beek again. We had a fantastic team during our time at Ajax. I have a very good relationship with him, and I'm looking forward to meeting him again on the field. Van de Beek traveled to Thailand and Australia for the preseason tour and was named on the bench for the Dutchman's first 5 games in charge of the league before falling ill. The chances were high when he returned, although he was given a lifeline by starting back-to-back games against Real Sociedad and Aston Villa in early November 2021. Bruno Fernandes was moved to the wing against Sociedad and was suspended against Villa, meaning Van de Beek had the opportunity to play as the team's attacking midfielder. Although these games were a chance for Van de Beek to make his mark, he was substituted after 15 minutes in Spain and was again hooked at Villa Park after making just 11 touches of the ball in the first half. It was a surprise for Van de Beek to have these opportunities, and unfortunately, he didn't take advantage of them. Ten Hag's gamble didn't work, and he said of the player shortly afterwards, "I've seen him better in the past. But I think in terms of positioning, he's acting very well. But he has to take that step. I don't think for a loan to make sense. Either he fights for himself and proves his worth in this atmosphere, in this environment, or he leaves. But for me, there is still a path for him. There is still a perspective for him. It won't be easy because the competition there is very strong." The World Cup in Qatar came next, and Van de Beek failed to make the Dutch squad, which was no surprise. Disaster struck in January when he suffered a knee injury. The 26-year-old has been sidelined until the end of the season, and when speaking to reporters after the preseason game against Lyon last summer, he admitted he was ready to leave. "I'm back after injury and I'm in good shape," said Van de Beek. "Every day something can happen, so it's hard to say right now where my future will be. In football you never know, especially with me, so we'll see what happens. It's hard to say right now where my future lies." Van de Beek was friendly in the mixed Murrayfield area and was open with journalists. "There was never any doubt about your character, your application in training, or your desire to succeed. The truth is he is below the standard required at United and has only made 28 appearances for the club, meaning a fee of £1.25 million has been paid for every appearance he has made, not including his salary." The summer move failed to materialize, and Van de Beek's omissions from this season's matchday squads quickly became irrelevant, meaning a January departure was inevitable. His move to Frankfurt was supposed to give him a break, but it didn't. He has a contract with United until 2025 and is expected to return this summer.